Episode of Secrets of Herbal Healing. And today we're talking about a really interesting subject, and it's also just sort of bridging a new area of science and a bit of exploration, which you might find really interesting. And it's around the power of live food for detoxing, and particularly the lightened food and how that powers our body. So I think you'll find this fascinating, and we're going to dig into this, explore some of the secrets behind it and some of the science behind it, and simplify it down so you can apply it in your everyday life. So talk soon. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and this will give you a walkthrough of the subject, and you'll be able to use the little QR code in the top corner there if you want to follow along, or if you want to dig into the information, have a look at the page yourself and research it a bit further. So this is one of my pet subjects because I just love this whole universe that we live in, and how we, I guess, everything we discover as we discover more and more things scientifically sort of all correlates and links together with this idea that we're more than just a physical being, that there's more dimensions to us. And in particular, how it's all integrated with life energy and the living and healing energy that's available to us in plant foods in particular, and herbal medicines, and how those things integrate with the living life force that's within our entire universe that gives rise to life, and how this can detox and heal your body. So let's have a quick look at some of these foods, how this works. I quite often talk about what I call dead food, which is processed food. But today what we're going to talk about is how we actually destroy food by cooking, and some of the toxins that are generated by that cooking process. So when we barbecue, fry, grill, even roast food, we create some of these toxic compounds which can interfere with our body's metabolism. And trans fatty acids is one of them. So these are like denatured fats which don't quite fit into our body chemistry. Acrylamide, which is the I guess the browning that you get on foods when you grill and fry and roast, which is almost plasticizing the food in a sense when you do that. And advanced glycation products, they're called, which is a combination of fats and sugars that kind of almost denature when they are fried. I mean, these things taste great, don't they? And it's like the charred effect, if you like. So that's why we get hooked on them. But they're actually quite toxic to our body. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. So they're foreign substances which our body really doesn't like. So that's just one instance of damaging the food through cooking. Further nutrient damage can happen when you microwave, boil, even stir fry if you overdo it at an extremely high heat, because it leaches nutrients out of the food, and it also basically destroys the life energy that they have in them. So packaged foods in the supermarkets are usually pasteurized to kill any organisms that are on the food. So this is another way we destroy nutrient value in the food, is by pasteurizing, sterilizing the food, basically. But you can also do that yourself with extreme heat. So extreme boiling, extreme heat microwaving. And nutrients leach from the food when you do this, in particular antioxidants. And the antioxidants are actually, there's hundreds and hundreds of antioxidants in the food. They are the healing, protecting, anti-inflammatory, defense mechanism nutrients that protect our membranes and tissues from damage and inflammation. So we need those. So that's just some examples of nutrient losses in the food. And it can cause the food to also be a dead food, without the life energy. And we're going to talk about life energy towards the end of this little session, so stick around for that. So let's look at some of the benefits of having food raw, and some of the studies that have been conducted on this. So the raw foods have more bioactive compounds, particularly the carotenoids, phenols, and antioxidants. So these are antioxidant compounds that protect the body from damage. These compounds decrease the risk of chronic diseases due to their anti-inflammatory effects. And raw, minimally processed foods retain these antioxidants. And you'll know when you cook food, because if you overcook food, it loses its color. And that's a sure sign that the antioxidant properties of the food are deteriorating and being lost. An easy way to spot it if you're overdoing it. So the bioavailability is also less, which is an interesting fact. So they become less available to the body's chemistry for use and less helpful for the body's metabolism. So that's where raw foods are extremely good, because they retain those powerful antioxidants. And the antioxidants, interestingly, they're like pigments that are produced in direct response to sunlight. And so we know that foods ripen when they're out in the sun. You know, the tomatoes go red, the oranges go orange, and so on. And it's the antioxidants that are producing those colors in the food. So that's just an interesting thought. And when you cook and boil and fry and do all these basically destructive processes to the food, the antioxidants get broken down and destroyed. Yeah. So here's an interesting one: raw food for weight loss. They studied 216 men and 297 women for nearly 4 years. And there was a significant weight loss of nearly 10 kg for men and 12 kg for women. So this is just going on a raw food diet, so an uncooked food diet. And there's some explanations for this. I mean, one thing with raw food is you get a lot more water in the food, because most raw plant food is up to 90% water. So you get a lot more hydration. And so therefore those foods are a lot more filling with a lot less calories. And most raw food is very, very high in fiber too. And so this fiber creates this filling effect. For example, try and eat 2 or 3 apples, right? You feel pretty full after 1 apple normally, don't you? And that's an example of how these sort of foods fill you up. And also you obviously get all those anti-inflammatory, antioxidant benefits. But another thing we're going to talk about in a minute is the life force and the life energy. So here's another example of benefits of raw food, and this is chronic disease. And by chronic disease, these are actually the biggest diseases that we have worldwide that are responsible for our deaths, basically mortality, is the chronic diseases: heart disease, cancer, related to metabolic problems like high cholesterol and blood sugar. And so by doing a raw food diet, you are avoiding the high protein, acid forming foods and inflammatory foods, but you're also avoiding processed carbohydrates, processed fats, processed sugars, all of the foods that cause metabolic disruption, metabolic imbalance, blood sugar, cholesterol problems, weight gain, and eventually heart disease, cancer. So there's a direct link, and you'll see these studies here that show that quite clearly. What about mental health? I found this fascinating because mental health is obviously a big concern around the world. And we know that we seem to be suffering more and more with mental health problems, whether it's stress in our society, but I think also a lot of it, a large contributing factor is our diet and our lifestyle, but also the fact that we're being pumped with pharmaceutical drugs at the first sign of any kind of ill health or mental health. And most of these pharmaceuticals are highly destructive, and you take them away and the person's in a far worse condition than they started. So looking at food and what we can do there for mental health is huge. And this is an interesting study. I'll just go through it quickly, but 422 adults between 18 and 25, which is a very, very common age to suffer with mental health conditions. 66% of them female, from New Zealand and the United States. So they completed online surveys about their consumption of raw food, and these were some of the findings. So the high intakes of fruit and vegetables were significantly associated with reduced depressive symptoms, improvements in positive mood, life satisfaction, and overall flourishing. They also highlighted the micronutrient value, which we talked about just a minute ago. That's been the key component. And here's some of the top beneficial raw foods. Now, I found this really interesting because these are foods that we use in most of our detox recipes. So carrots, bananas, apples, dark leafy greens, spinach, obviously kale would fit in there, grapefruit, lettuce. So the leafy greens, citrus fruits, fresh berries, cucumber and kiwi fruits. So a lot of these are green foods high in chlorophyll and foods high in antioxidants, such as carrots, leafy greens, citrus fruits, and berries. So fascinating, isn't it? These are the foods that are highly exposed to the sun. They've become high in antioxidants and high in chlorophyll. And so this is a great picture which sort of indicates a lot of these foods that are extremely good for our mental health, according to studies. So there you go. One of the best things you can do for your mood. Now, I thought this was interesting, raw food and fertility. I heard about this cat study years ago, and it was done in the 1940s where they studied 900 cats. They studied them for several generations. And what they found was that the cats that were given raw food, like fish and meat and so on, compared to cats that were given processed food, like cat biscuits, for example. And the cats that had the raw food were much more healthy. And one of the things that they exhibited was they were more fertile across generations. And after a couple of generations, I think it was the third generation, many of the cats that were on processed food became infertile. So, is this a factor in our fertility rates dropping around the world? The fact that we're having more processed food, and it could take generations to occur. And so we're probably in that third generation now of heavily processed food diets. And I would say we're experiencing what the cat study showed, infertility related to processed food. And so getting back to raw food could be a secret to fertility. And I'm just wondering why that is. The source of life energy, the source of life force. Now, this is, I guess, controversial in mainstream science, but when you look at the alternative, medicines around the world and spirituality, religions, all those sorts of things, they all talk about this light as being like the force of life, the spirit, the chi, the prana, you name it. There's 1,000 different terms used for this inner light. And so I thought this is really interesting. This is what I wanted to share with you today, which is a bit of a theory around light and food. And I think science hasn't quite got there yet to the understanding, but we do know scientifically in physics that there's a law called the law of conservation where energy is never lost. It simply moves around through the system, through the universe, and if you like, through the ecosystem on Earth. So think of it this way: the sun shines on the planet, the plants capture that sunlight and heat into chlorophyll, which is the energy for plants to grow, and then that produces all the other fruits and vegetables that we consume. And even the animals that we eat, the meat that we eat, is a byproduct of them consuming the chlorophyll rich and the light rich foods. So that light, that sunlight that originally was captured, has been released again as a form of energy in our bodies. And I always like to think of when you put a piece of wood on the fire and you feel that warmth that's coming from that wood on the fire. That warmth is actually the energy that was captured from the sun. So the heat and light came from the sun, it was captured in the leaves on the trees, and it was stored in the wood as fuel, and then we burn it and we get that heat and light. And it's such a wonderful energy, isn't it, when you sit by a fire and you feel that warm glow. Now, I believe that that same warmth and that same glow that we feel when we're healthy, when we feel connected internally with ourselves on an emotional, spiritual level. And obviously, we look at it now, there's a mental, an emotional component to this feeling that we get, that by connecting with raw food, with sunlight, with living energy that's in the plant kingdom, if you want to get it firsthand, get it from the sun itself. Get in the sun. You'll produce hormones, serotonin. the feel-good hormones are produced. And we know that people are much happier when they get sunlight. So if we can get it in our food as well, when we're detoxing, not only do we get the effect of purifying our body and cleansing it of all the toxins from all the processed foods and meats and carry on, but we get this healing light and healing energy. And maybe that's why people say when they do a detox, they have this wonderful experience of feeling connected on another level that's very, very difficult to, explain in everyday terms. So there you go. I thought that would be interesting. And there's a little bit of a discussion on this on the webpage. If you want to dig into it and look at the scientific aspects of it and how it can be understood. And I think it's worth, I'll just skip down this page, having like the little video there where I talk about, the energy in food and processed food in the supermarkets. So this is one thing we do when we do a detox program, is we totally avoid processed foods of any kind. And at the bottom of this page, you'll also find some raw food detox diet recipes. Most of these are 100% raw. There is some cooked kumara there, but everything else is a salad, a smoothie, raw foods as much as possible. And so these are the foods that we would use on a raw food detox. And you can do these raw food detoxes over 7 to 14 days and combine it with the herbal program and get an amazing healing process to happen in your body. So I hope you found that interesting. I know it's a bit of an off-the-wall topic, but I believe that we haven't quite yet understood our biology and our connection to the universe in the sense of life itself. And by going through this experience, by trying this process of detoxing with raw foods, you can have a first-hand, you can be basically a witness to yourself that this is true, that we're connected directly to the universal energy, and it has a direct impact on healing our bodies when we get more and more abundance of it. We feel this connectedness with ourselves, with nature, with everybody else, and with the world around us. And that's really the healing power of detoxing. So I hope that's been helpful today. And we're going to dig into this a little bit further next week and have a look at another topic, which is the green power detox, where you use everything green. And of course, this is a really interesting area when you really get drilled down into it even further, is the power of green. So good talking to you, you deep thinking herb lovers, and I look forward to talking to you